So he immediately grabs his phone and dials his old man. Dad, I woke up the morning after and suddenly I have 4 balls. His dad goes, get out of there, son, you're being fucked.
You're done.
I didn't think it'd end up back here. When I made my videos on Wanted Dead's gameplay and plot, I figured I was done with the game back in 2023. It got an update on its 1-year anniversary, but nothing that I felt warranted a follow-up video. But then I got wind of a combat overhaul update, and resigned myself to getting back into the game for this video. The only time I ever do comparison videos is when I'm comparing a remake to its original version, where both games are separate projects that share the same gameplay and plot elements. I don't think I've ever compared a game to a past version of itself. To do so, I have a couple of options. 1. I could downpatch Wanted Dead and play it in its base form without the patches, but after skimming a guide on YouTube on how to do that, it looked like it took way more effort than I wanted to put into this video. Which leads me to option 2. I could install another version of Wanted Dead that doesn't have the patches and won't be updated by Steam. I chose this method because it was a lot simpler and doesn't require me to tinker with Steam settings. So thanks, Amelie, for making my job easier. I'm no scientist, so I have no clear methodology on how I'm conducting this video. All I'm doing is recording runs on the patched and unpatched versions of the game and comparing the footage. Instead of going through all the bullet points on the combat overhaul and anniversary updates, I'll just go through the changes that feel the most overt, the substantial changes. Then the changes that can't be shown, but are instead felt, what I call the subjective changes. And finally, the changes that feel like they have zero impact to the overall experience, the inconsequential changes. If you want the quick and dirty on this video, the patches are just that, patches. They patch up a couple of holes in the overall experience, but I won't outright say that they fix the game for me. The issues I had for the game on release are still there, and the one thing that I think changed the most in the time between Wanted Dead releasing and getting patches doesn't even come from the game itself. But more on that later. Let's talk about those changes. The first big difference between both versions is that the skill tree has been rearranged and features new skills. I'm not going to pour over every major change, but one of the better moves is that the game merged the skills to perform finishing strikes on when you cut off an arm or a leg into a single skill, which is one of the things I said should have been done in my first video. Or, just do what Ninja Gaiden 2 did and make amputations the visual cue that an enemy was ready for a finishing strike, instead of making them flash white. Something that I really appreciate is that you start the game with a dodge roll built into your moveset, instead of having to unlock the skill tree like in the unpatched version. It frees up a skill node, and makes the early game less painful when it comes to closing in on enemies. Another notable change is tweaking the slide attack so that it knocks away riot shields. Now I like this change in spirit. The idea behind it is good. Riot shields are one of the more annoying basic units because the parry window for their attacks always feels wonky. In practice, it's like so-so when it comes to utility. And that's because riot shield enemies have a charge attack that they'll use at a certain distance, and their charge has priority over your slide attack. Not only that, they still have the same 2-hit combo that every other basic enemy unit has if they're within melee distance. So the window for pulling off the slide attack is both narrow and inconsistent. You have to close the distance with riot shield enemies before they can proc their charge, and still be far enough away to do the slide attack before they do their 2-hit combo. And this is all over an enemy type that only appears in a few missions, and only in specific parts at that. The other new attack that the update brings is a variant of the slide attack, where you fire your pistol instead of swinging your sword. This one isn't a bad addition, but it doesn't really add much to the combo pool. I like that you snap to the nearest target when you fire your pistol, and I think pistol fire softens enemies up for finishing strikes, but it feels like they had the data for a move that didn't make it into the release build, and finally had time to throw it back into the game. The last major change to the skills is that activating bullet time will now also put you into an adrenaline state. you gain a second meter over your health that counts down, and unlocking additional skills will increase your chances to stun and decapitate your enemies while in that state. The meter also serves as a buffer for any damage you would take to your health bar while it's active. This is a good change because it gives you a reason to activate bullet time on enemies that normally wouldn't be susceptible to finishing strikes, as Adrenaline State provides a brief health and damage buff, and so you can rush down beefier enemies at a faster rate than before. But I think the timer for the meter goes down way too fast. In a practical scenario, say I run right into the middle of a group of enemies and go into bullet time. I would then do a chain of finishing strikes to thin out the crowd. But if I did that, the adrenaline meter is still ticking down, so whatever health and damage buffs I would have gotten in that state don't really matter once I'm through with my conga line of death. The game mitigates this by making it easier to build up adrenaline meter for every attack and finishing strike, but that just means I'm doing more laps on the gameplay treadmill. Besides this, you can now unlock skills that will make it easier to either stun enemies with headshots or decapitate them with focused fire from your rifle. From the times I've used my rifle during the campaign, I can tell it works, but I don't actually like shooting in this game, so I never really use it, unless I've got a good shotgun, or a grenade launcher. Oh yeah, now the update has changed the D-pad shortcuts, so that pressing left will swap out your long arm, and pressing right will swap out your grenades. So you don't have to do the awkward thing where you cook a grenade, and then you have to press either left or right to swap from frag to incendiary. Those are the most overt changes. The rest of the changes are just little tweaks, like putting additional stim packs at the start of a fight with the first elite ninja you come up against in the first mission. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say the game is patching up holes. I think that ninja fight was the first filter enemy for most people. I know it was for me. And the stim packs were placed at the edge of the arena as a quick fix for that roadblock. Oh, real quick, now when you stand over a stim pack and heal, you don't have to walk away to be able to pick up the stim pack later on. That was really annoying in the original build. The devs stated in their changelog that they tweaked the timing windows for parrying enemy attacks and damage values, and you can feel those changes when you play the game. There are moments in my patched runs where I could both parry a red attack and shoot it with my pistol, something I could rarely ever pull off in the original build, if I was lucky. So, here's what I'm gonna start schizo posting about the game. I'm not a programmer. I don't know what it takes to build a game. But I swear that whatever they did to tweak the timings has affected the game's performance. Like, you know that thing about how some games have their logic timed to frame rate? Without digging into the game's code, and knowing what the fuck I'm looking at if I even did do that, I can't say for sure that the Overhaul tweaks have changed the game logic. But something happened. When I recorded the patched version, I made 2 separate runs because I was streaming the game on Discord during my first run to show it to friends, and I wasn't sure if that played a factor into the slowdown I was feeling at the time. There's a cutscene at the end of the second mission where you fight the synthetics and their leader, and it was running at like sub 30 at the time. On subsequent attempts, it ran better in both versions, which makes it look like Discord streaming could have been a factor. But then, I ran around the police department hub in my second run, and I was feeling slowdown in rooms that didn't have that problem in the unpatched version. What muddies the water even more is that both versions have instances where doing a finishing strike on an enemy wouldn't work properly, so I'd see Hannah do the kill animation while the enemy model stood in place, or both models wouldn't move at all.
Grenade! Is that all of them?
At first, I was gonna make a joke about how So Late made the game better by making it worse, but now I'm not so sure anymore. I guess this is a good place to talk about the inconsequential changes, the ones that don't feel like they really change the overall experience. First, there's now an additional easy mode called Neko mode. I don't know how it plays because I didn't try it. Also, the game's default controls have changed so that you have to press the right stick in to get into cover, but you can toggle it back to auto cover in the options. I don't see why this was necessary, as the auto cover in this game is pretty decent. And again, it didn't really matter for me because I rarely, if ever, use my rifle. That's something I want to bring up, Now that I've played this game, probably more than most people ever will. I don't care for the shooting mechanics. The over-the-shoulder camera is in this weird spot where it's too close to Hannah to provide any real help for run and gunning, and it's too claustrophobic for precision aiming, to where I'd rather be able to go in a first-person perspective when I aim down sights. Not only that, but even if you wanted to play the game entirely as a shooter, most enemies won't let you. Ninja-type enemies will chase you down, and so will heavy gunner types. And even if you just focus on the gun-toting enemies, the way their hit scan damage works, they'll chew through your health before you can even line up a proper shot, so it's almost always better to rush them down along with everyone else. Oh, but don't forget about their shitty 2-hit combo that you have to parry on the second hit if you want to guarantee a finishing strike. You have no idea how annoying it is to run up to an enemy hiding behind cover, whiff your dash attack, and get hit with their dumb 2-hit move. And the third-person camera can actually hurt you if you're carrying an explosive weapon like the grenade launcher. I've lined up shots thinking they'll hit a target on the other side of the map, only to get a face full of shrapnel because my shot didn't actually clear the barrier or wall to the right of me, even though the third-person camera made me think it did. So, do the changes help with the boss encounters? Like with everything else, the bosses still have all of their underlying issues in the patched version, but the new combat tweaks do soften their impact to some degree. But I still get bodied by Adam and Richter if I don't approach them the right way. Patched or unpatched, you can still get flattened by the spider tank in the first mission if you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. At this point, the easiest boss for me is Kolchak, because her attack combos are short and she tanks most face shots, which makes her easy to rush down, especially if you can catch her flashing red attacks. Apart from the combat, it's still the same game. Same plot, same cutscenes, same minigames, and you still can't skip them. What the fuck, man, come on. Although Space Runaway, the shmup, did get its mechanics changed so that dying doesn't reset the level and drop your upgrades, so that's cool. But I still have the same timing issues with Ramen's and Karaoke's inputs, and Karaoke still only features one song. Now, like I said at the start of the video, the one major change to the game's plot doesn't actually come from the game itself. You know how people always joke about Kojima predicting the impending cyberpunk dystopia that reality is gradually building towards? So the big twist in Wanted Dead's plot, and again, I am not 100% sure this is the case, but I've seen the same cutscenes over and over again, and they all lead to the same conclusion. Anyway, the game's plot implies that the synthetic drones that modern society has become dependent on aren't actually drones, but flesh and blood people modified to resemble drones. Companies that claim to be the forefront of synthetic manufacture are instead resorting to human trafficking and memory tampering to turn people into drones, and then using those fake drones to handle jobs that would be considered too dangerous for humans to do. To go even further, it's implied that Hannah happens to be one of those fake drones, but she doesn't remember it because she signed her life away so that the company she works for could support her ill child, and the meds she took probably made her susceptible to memory tampering. There are documents you can pick up in the police station showing Hannah's and her team's various crimes, and they all happen to share the same charges, which is odd enough on its own. But then, during the final free chapter where Hannah can use the police station as a hub, you can find a file on Hannah's criminal profile from her past life, and it all happens to be petty offenses and not the war crimes that her record with the police station show. So, how does all this end up becoming a Kojima moment for Wanted Dead? Recently, an article stated that the Amazon self-checkout stores that use AI to scan the products don't actually use AI. Instead, an Amazon employee working remotely does all the heavy lifting when it comes to scanning the product and completing the transaction once the buyer walks out with the item. Essentially, the article is alleging that Amazon is performing AI theater. They're making a service look like it's automated, but there's a very human element involved in the process. Now, do we give Soleil this dub? I'm conflicted. This is my personal Deus Ex Twin Towers skybox moment, a bizarre point in time where real life validates speculative sci-fi.
Oh shit! Detective Stone has a lead. Wake up. This case reeked from the very start.
So with all that said, we gotta ask the $1,000,000 question. Is Wanted Dead worth getting now? And to that, I reply with a resounding, A year ago, back when this game was going for $60, I'd tell you not to buy it at full price. There's only 5 missions, a handful of minigames, and the combat was lukewarm compared to the studio's pedigree as Team Ninja Diaspora. Now, with the anniversary and combat overhaul updates, and the price drop to have its original value, I'd say that Wanted Dead is a more attractive offer if you're looking for another character action game to check out. See, despite all my comments and jokes at the game's expense, I don't want it to fail, and I don't want Soleil to give up on their baby. It would be so easy for them to just take on another contract job and put out their next licensed title alongside Samurai Jack and Valkyrie Elysium, but they haven't moved on from Wanted Dead. I don't expect anyone at that studio to ever see this video, but if they do plan on staying the course, I'll repeat the one thing they should have added to the game since launch. Rip off Metal Gear Rising and let Hannah do a ninja run. Just take the time to have her do some sword swiping animations to indicate that she's deflecting bullets and blend it into a running animation. That's all I ever need. And, I don't know, either extend the duration of Adrenaline mode to double the length so I can still use it after executing all the trash mobs, or at least pause the meter when I'm doing a finishing strike. And for the love of God, let us skip the minigames.